for more insight on tonight's playoff matchup between the Leafs and Panthers. We're joined now live by Hot Take Hockey host John Viveiros. Great to chat with you again, John. We spoke last week heading into Game 6. Let's talk about this series. Obviously, there's a few things different than a couple years ago, and one thing in particular, Brad Marchand.
For sure, Jamie. And yeah, thanks for having me again. Brad Marchand on that third line for Florida is a huge perspective here. I think when you look at the depth, and the Toronto Maple Leafs depth is definitely better this year, but you could say the same about the Florida Panthers. When you add a Stanley Cup champion, and I would say a star player in Brad Marchand, he's towards the end of his career, but I think for adding that, Craig Berube and the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to have to look out for that third line for the Florida Panthers, being able to spread that lineup out. So it's a much tougher opponent than what you saw in the first round against the Ottawa Senators. So guys like Max Domi, Max Pacioretty, who had big moments in big games in the first round, you're going to need even more from those guys. Add in former Panther Steven Lorentz, newly acquired Scott Lawton, just down the list. The Toronto Maple Leafs are going to have to live up to that hype for their depth against a very deep Florida Panthers team. So as we saw 2 years ago in the second round, the Toronto Maple Leafs are playing the Florida Panthers, but that version of the Leafs I don't think is nearly as deep as this one. So hopefully we can go the distance and maybe see a Leafs win in this series.
And furthermore, when it comes to the Panthers lineup and the guys who can score, I think I'm looking at the stats right now, and I think 10 out of the 20 players have contributed goals. So when you've got an entire team who can put the puck in the back of the net, that's on top of being Stanley Cup champs. It's going to be a challenging series.
For sure. And I mean, they have different type of scorers, Jamie. Like you look at Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Bennett, a little bit of the shenanigans after the whistle, and they really love to live in front of that net. So they're going to be bugging former teammate Anthony Stolarz. And then you look at different type of two-way forwards like Sam Reinhart and Alexander Barkov, who are Selke candidates as the best two-way and defensive forwards in the league. So those guys can also put up offense. And former draft pick Carter Verhaeghe's also on that top line of the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's on the top line for Florida. So the Leafs have some demons to exercise here, Jamie, and it definitely comes at the matchup of the Florida Panthers. So if they could beat Florida, they could go all the way. I think that's kind of the perspective here for Leaf fans. This is going to be the toughest matchup they face on a potential run to the Stanley Cup final. And
speaking of matchups, when you have a coach who has won a Stanley Cup in the past with Berube, I mean, he made that lineup change with Pacioretty in the last game. It paid off, and also there was a lot of expectations coming from our big scorers, and they stepped up in Game 6. Let's talk about what the Leafs need to do and the kind of contributions that our core four really need to produce in this series.
For sure, Jamie. And I think you could actually even look at it as a core five with how Matthew Knies is playing. He's been very consistent, and how he played in the first round, I think it's evident. He had 3 high-danger goals in that first round. So Matthew Knies gets in those areas. He's able to score those type of goals. He also has a couple goals to show for against his short career so far against the Florida Panthers. So he likes to play in Florida, in Tampa. So that's also an advantage for Toronto. You start on home ice, maybe get the core four going, and then maybe some depth throughout the rest of the series. For a guy like John Viveiros, we know he likes these kind of matchups. He was the captain on this team, but now has still taken on a leadership role supporting Austin Matthews. So those guys need to keep consistent. But the guy we're all going to be watching for, Jamie, is Mitch Marner. He's a pending unrestricted free agent this summer. We're still waiting for him to really break out when the chips are on the line, and all of Leaf Nation is looking for him to score a big goal. So I think for Mitch Marner, he's got 1 goal, 7 assists, but that 1 goal came all the way back to Game 1 in the first round series. So we're now in the second round against the Florida Panthers. It's time for Mitch Marner to really have a big performance. And I know William Nylander, I mean, he's scored some big goals, so I think we're okay with Willie at this point.
And a matchup of the 2 big goalies obviously is going to be something to watch. Hot Take Hockey host John Viveiros, always great to chat. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jamie.